Thank you very much. Sorry for the delay. We had a little travel logistics, which is the way. Let me invite our special guests who are here today. Starting at my right, we have Mira Sorvino, who it's our pleasure to have Ms. Sorvino here. We were reminiscing inside for a moment, and Mira's father, who is a great actor, and my father, who I consider was a great governor, were great friends. So it's a pleasure to be with her. Leslie Silva is joining us, and she's also a great actress, and Carmen LeBeau. We want to thank them all very much for being here and addressing this very important issue. To my left, Melissa DeRosa, who, as you know, is Secretary to the Governor, Alfonso David, Counsel to the Governor, and Robbie Kaplan, who is co-founder of Time's Up Legal Defense Fund and one of the outstanding legal minds in this nation on many issues, including issues that affect women. The topic today is making change, making broad change on a difficult topic. Big problems require big solutions. And change is hard. You know, we all say we want change, we understand we need to change, but we actually are creatures of habit at the end of the day. And to make large-scale societal change is difficult. But it's not impossible, and that's what we strive to do. And there can be a moment in time where the forces are arrayed in such a way as to actually break through and create change. We passed, finally, the toughest gun control laws in the United States of America here in the state of New York after the Sandy Hook massacre in Connecticut, because it was a moment in time where people said, enough is enough, we have to do something. And that law, I believe, has been vindicated thousands of times over with all the deaths we've seen. We passed the highest minimum wage in the United States, $15, because people understood that you had people working full-time and living in poverty. We passed marriage equality that finally said you're discriminating against people who are LGBTQ. And people got it. I think we have a moment in time today to recognize a major problem that has existed, a dirty little secret of society, which is that sexual harassment, sexual abuse of women is a widespread, pervasive issue that has gone on for years. In a male-dominated society where men write the laws from their perspective, and a male-dominated society where men enforce the laws, there has been an ongoing, persistent culture of abuse of women in terms of sexual harassment, assault, discrimination. But today's a different day, and there have been revelations and an exposure that is undeniable. Very powerful people in society have been outed and exposed as having abused women repeatedly with impunity for a long period of time. High-level government officials, high-level media officials, high-level corporate officials. 10, 20, 30 years of abuse that people got away with. And there comes a moment in time where society stands up and says, enough is enough. And I believe we are at that moment. I believe we have exposed the truth to the point where people are now ready to act. The exposure comes from courageous people like the people we see here today. Time's Up movement that organized women and men to tell their stories, the Me Too movement, and then just a viral communication of people standing up and saying, I'm not ashamed, and I have no guilt, I was the victim, and I am here to tell the truth. Society gets it. Step 2 is the action. What is the action we want taken? The current law says sexual harassment has to be severe or pervasive. Severe or pervasive. Look at those words. It has to be severe to break the law. It has to be pervasive. And when you look at the case law on that threshold, you have some despicable acts that have been performed repeatedly, where the court has determined they're not severe enough or they're not pervasive enough. They are only sporadic, the court said. And sporadic is not pervasive. Oh, so I can sporadically sexually harass someone as long as I don't go so far as it becomes pervasive. No, it is a terrible legal standard, and it has to be changed, and it has to be changed now. That is the action that the revelation and the exposures dictate as the only rational conclusion. You've exposed the wrongdoing. Now do something about it. Second issue is statute of limitations for rape in the second and third degree is only 5 years. 5 years goes like that. And there are periods of time where a victim is not, for one reason or another, able to state a claim or willing to state a claim or has come to terms to state the claim. There should be no statute of limitations for rape in the second and third degree, as far as I'm concerned, but certainly 5 years is an abject dereliction of justice. And these changes have to be made now. No procrastination. The legislature is here. The truth is out. This is the moment for change. The legal changes are indisputable. It has to be done now. And it has to be done in New York. We pride ourselves on being the progressive capital of the nation. All due respect to other states, I know California. But. And factually, historically, New York has been the most aggressive, progressive state. And we set the bar and we set the standard. Let's do it here again in the name of women's rights and women's justice. And let's honor all the women who have suffered this pain and endured this humiliation. Let's honor the women who have had the courage to come forward and tell their story, even though it was personally hard and difficult. And let's actually change things, because that's all that matters at the end of the day. Did we make this place a better place? Did we make positive change? And in this situation, there's no reason why we don't. With that, let me turn it over to Leslie Silva and Carmen for opening remarks.
Time's Up was born out of the need to turn pain into action.
In the fall of 2017, thanks to the bravery of so many women, myself included, who spoke out, including Mira Sorvino, who is with us today, we began to learn of the widespread abuse and misbehavior that was happening to women of all kinds in workplaces across the globe.
As these revelations sparked a global reckoning, women in the entertainment industry came together to talk about what we could do to prevent abuse and ensure equity for all working women.
Since launching Time's Up, we focused on creating solutions that will address change at every level in an effort to ensure that no woman will ever feel alone again.
As a first solution, we launched the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund, which is housed at and administered by the National Women's Law Center Fund, LLC, and connects those who experience sexual assault, harassment, or retaliation at work with legal and PR resources.
And while we're proud of the work of the Legal Defense Fund, we know the need to change culture and laws in order to prevent these instances from happening in the first place.
We're here today because New York State has the opportunity to make changes that will help us move in a direction where women of all kinds across our state can experience safe, fair, and dignified workplaces.
We thank Governor Cuomo for his leadership on pushing the New York safety agenda and for having us here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from Mira Sorvino, who needs no introduction from me. She's an award-winning actress. I do find it interesting, however, that Mira would have decided to follow her father's occupation. That must be all sorts of pressures on you to follow the footsteps of your father in the same type of profession. I can't imagine what that is like. Thank you very much for being here. Mira Sorvino, thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So grateful to be here, so moved by your words. We're so proud and happy and grateful to have you as an ally in this fight. As you've said, this is the time for a sea change. This is the time for a cultural shift. Basically, this has been the way it has always been for women. There has always been a power dynamic, a patriarchal abuse of women through many means, but largely sexual. And we may be on the cusp of the change that changes it forever for all the daughters to come, for all the future generations. They may not have to worry about these things that we have endured our entire lives, as did our mothers, as did our grandmothers, as did our ancestors way back to the Neanderthal age. So I am thrilled to see thought and passion turning into action. I've always said as an advocate, because I've been advocating for a long time, both on women's rights and human trafficking with the United Nations for UNODC, that awareness without action is hollow, it's nothing. So I urge the legislature to pass these bills, because this takes us that next step into trying to change things on the ground. And let me be clear, it's not only for women. Men are rape and sexual harassment victims too. Non-binary people are victims. This is not a gender-specific thing, although disproportionately it does affect women. All races, all religions, all sexual preferences, gender identities, they are all subject to victimhood due to sexual predation and harassment. Firstly, I'd like to talk to you about the severe or pervasive law. In California last year, we had a big legal victory. I was working on this with equal rights advocates, and we got a law passed that did effectively what you want to do here, which got rid of that qualification on the law, which makes it so hard to win in court to actually even bring a case, because a judge will deem that the situation was not severe or pervasive enough, and therefore it can't even be tried. It just stops dead in the water right there. And the example in California that we used was why the law had the practice had the moniker the one grope law, or the one grope practice. Basically, it was a case in which a 911 emergency hotline worker was on duty, taking a call, actively speaking to someone in distress, when her coworker came up behind her and put his hands under her shirt and squeezed her breasts. And she reported it, and the judge deemed it not severe or pervasive enough. Now, meanwhile, he eventually was criminally charged for battery and did time for assault on the criminal side, but on the civil side, there was no justice to be had because that was not deemed severe or pervasive enough. Likewise, if a man decided to expose himself to a female coworker, to take off his clothes and stand there naked, if he only did it once, or maybe just once in a while, sporadically, that's not severe or pervasive enough. I think that standard is ridiculous. And I also want you all to understand that sexual harassment is the gateway drug for predators. So if a person is able to get away with sexual harassment, it's a testing ground. It's a way for people in power to test the boundaries of what the people working with them or for them can endure. And if they accept the harassment because they are in fear for their job, in fear for their livelihood, in fear either of not getting a promotion or being fired outright, and if you look at the effects of that on a regular American worker, that could be the difference between survival and being homeless in 3 months. If you lose your paycheck and do not get another job because you have refused your boss's advances or someone else in your work environment's advances, you could be homeless. You could not be able to feed your kids. You could lose your home. So these are very, very pressing concerns. Sexual harassment is not a light thing, and it is the gateway drug to worse sexual predation, including coerced relationships, assault, and rape. Okay. Secondly, let's talk about the statute of limitations. So you understand second-degree rape is rape where consent is impossible. For example, the victim is drugged or unable to give consent or drunk past the point of consent. Third degree is a rape in which there is no consent. And I can tell you, I have, this whole Me Too thing has been wonderful, but it's been highly traumatizing for me on a personal level just because I have had to revisit my past and my demons in a way that I really had not fully explored. I had not really dealt with past traumas. I had not really sought out the help I needed. So this past year and a half has been a very interesting and hard and wonderful time for me. But I can stand here before you and say not only was I a sexual harassment and battery victim at the hands of Mr. Weinstein, but sexual harassment and battery, but I'm also a sexual assault victim, and I'm also a survivor of date rape. So, and I've never said that in public, and I do not want to go into detail, but I have never said that last part ever in public because it is impossible sometimes to share these sort of things, and I'm doing it here to try and help because there are all these survivors out there right now who need justice, who need to feel that they can take the time they need to sort through the trauma, to sort through the shame, because I can tell you in situations of second-degree rape, which is what mine would constitute, you feel shame. You feel like somehow it was your fault, that you should have been smarter, you should have protected yourself better, you should have not taken that drink, who knows what was in it, but like that you somehow got yourself into this situation. And growing up, as I did, in a Christian home with a very strong, almost fundamentalist mother and a patriarchal Italian family, there is still a shame to anything sexual being public. So you don't want to air your dirty laundry to other people, even if it was forced upon you. Even if it was not your fault, really, and you finally come to understand that you don't really want people to know that about you. So I am arguing here that please, 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 lawmakers, do your duty to reinstitute justice here and to prevent people from committing further rapes, because most rapists will rape again. So if someone has committed a date rape, if someone has forced themselves on someone in a coerced sexual situation where maybe he didn't use physical force, but he used all kinds of other psychological weapons, that person's not going to stop acting like that. That's not a one-time kind of behavior. It's a serious problem that will continue if not checked. So if you impose this 5-year limit, which is one of the shortest in the country, the worst is North Dakota, but we're one of the shortest in the country, and for a liberal state such as New York, that's a kind of a shame. A progressive state, I should say, then you are cutting off the time in which a person could finally have the courage and the wherewithal to come forward and name his or her attacker and try and get justice for that, and then that person gets put away, hopefully. Right now, an appallingly small number of rapes are actually prosecuted and convicted. 7 out of 1,000 rapes are prosecuted. 6 receive conviction and 5 jail time. Out of 1,000, these are national statistics. So that's how terrible the problem is right now. And when people worry about false reporting, rape and other sexual crimes have the same ratio of false reporting as any other major crime. It's a very small percentage. It's under 6%. So most of the time, when a person does the impossible psychologically, come forward and bare her soul or his soul and say, this happened to me and I want to achieve justice and I want to see this person punished, it is true. So believe survivors. Anyway, please, everyone, if you can find it in your heart, I know that there are groups that don't believe in any extension of statute of limitations, but in this case, it is extremely important for all the past victims, present survivors, and future would-be victims. Let's prevent this. Let's stop the triage and start changing the landscape now to say that time is up for sexual assault, sexual battery, sexual harassment, and rape. Time is truly up. Thank you.
Ms. Sorvino, I've been in this room many, many times on many issues. I don't think I've ever heard a more intelligent, powerful, persuasive point than you just made, and God bless you for being so brave and courageous. Let's give Ms. Sorvino a round of applause. One last point, then we'll take your questions. We talk about this in terms of legal changes, legal change on the definition of harassment, legal change on the statute of limitations. This is not really about legal changes. This is about cultural changes and behavioral changes. And this has been a pervasive, long-term cultural problem. And it has affected many, many more people than you can imagine. And when Ms. Sorvino says there's a number of reasons why people don't come forward and they don't speak about it and they don't pursue justice, I can tell you it is much, much worse than people imagine. And this has to be a wake-up call to society. And when we change these laws, we're not just changing laws. We're saying to men, enough is enough. It has been a male-dominated society. It is. The expression, it's a man's world. And the power dynamic, that is very true. And many men have abused that power through harassment, through sex, and it's a dark spot on this country and on our society's evolution, and it has to end, and it has to end now. Any questions on this topic? I'll take off-topic questions after our guests leave.
Governor, 2 weeks ago, we had a similar event talking about these issues. At that point, your staff had said you hadn't looked at eliminating the Farragut-Ellers defense.
Say that again?
The Farragut-Ellers defense? Sorry, it's hard to say. Have you looked at that since? Have you taken a position on that?
As we said, I think maybe yesterday, maybe a few days ago, we're engaged in conversations with the legislature on those pieces of legislation that have been advanced and on that specific issue.
Have you met with legislative leaders on this issue?
We spoke with a conference this morning, actually, with both houses, and we're speaking with them again this afternoon.
What did they say this morning on all these issues?
I wouldn't want to disclose that. That's deliberative privilege and is confidential, but we're engaging in conversations with the houses.
I have made it clear to both of them it's a major priority for me, both laws that we just spoke about, the definition of sexual harassment and the statute of limitations on rape. But again, it's bigger than that. It's bigger than that. What Time's Up has communicated, what the Me Too movement has communicated, the Harvey Weinstein case, the cases we've had here in the state of New York. If they do not pass these laws, they show disrespect to every woman in the state of New York. How's that?
There's a slew of other sexual harassment protections that are pending in the legislature. Are there any others that you're currently engaged in conversations with or you've added to your priorities for the end of session?
Yes, all of them. I believe there was a coalition of women who advanced a number of proposals, and we are looking at every single one of them. The governor in the budget advanced 3 proposals, so those proposals we're advancing with the legislature, and we're talking about all of the additional proposals that are being advanced.
Any other on topic?
Robbie, would you like to add any points?
I'm just going to be very brief. We all just heard, and thank you, Governor, we all just heard, as the Governor noted, really powerful testimony from Mira today, which was, as he said, incredibly dramatic and moving. On the van ride coming up here from the city, Mira and I were both ruing the fact that at Harvard we came this close to graduating summa cum laude. She was a year after me at Harvard. We only graduated magna. I'm not saying that to brag for either of us. I'm saying it because it underscores the point here. If it took a Harvard-educated magna cum laude graduate who is an award-winning actress that long until today to be able to say that she was the victim of date rape, that's decades. Think of why, all the many reasons why a 5-year statute of limitations is unacceptable. We have to, as the governor said, we pride ourselves on being progressive. We talk about being progressive. Let's do it. Let's actually be progressive. We should not have the same statute of limitations for rape as Alabama. That's just an embarrassment. The legislator should act, and they should get justice for the many, many women who this happens to.